Hey guys, it's Blake with Dominion Strength Training. Today we're going to talk about squat form and how to squat to improve strength. The fact that I'm saying how to squat to improve strength is important because there are plenty of opinions out there about different aspects of the squat. Two of the big ones are bar position and depth of squat. And if we say from the beginning that the purpose is to squat to increase strength, that's going to influence those decisions very heavily. And it's going to let us state some things pretty objectively that normally seem to be more subject to opinion. So the first thing to address is before we ever even take the bar out of the rack to do a squat, and that's bar position on the back. Now there are tons of videos out there talking about high bar versus low bar, which one is best, everybody's opinion about this. I'm not going to try to rehash any of those arguments here. I'm just simply going to state that for our purposes, which we said was squatting to increase strength, a low bar squat is going to be better for that purpose because you can carry more weight, you can include more muscle mass over longer effective range of motion. I don't really buy the argument on the high bar squat that people use it because it translates better to the Olympic lifts, because we're not trying to translate a movement pattern from our back squat to some other Olympic lift, because that's not the purpose. What we're trying to do is squat to increase strength, and for that reason we're going to use a low bar squat. So here's a look at the bar position that we want. Instead of the high bar position, which is the bar sitting on top of the traps, we're going to lower the bar down to where it's actually sitting on the top of the deltoids. Elbows are going to be slightly up to help create a little bit more delt shelf for the bar to sit on. And notice the hands and the thumbs are not going to be wrapped around the bar. They're going to be pressing into the bar, which helps press the bar into the back and secure it in position. But we're not going to wrap our hands around because we don't want any of the force from the bar to be transmitted down the arm and into the elbows. So this is what we mean by low bar position. And this is the bar position we're going to use for our squat. Now let's look at the squat itself. Once we have the bar position correct, we're going to lift the bar out of the rack and then step back just far enough to clear the rack. It's not necessary to take a bunch of steps out of the rack. The squat is going to be initiated by flexing the knees and the hips at exactly the same time. So the knees are going to track out over the toes, the hips are going to go back. A back angle is going to be established that keeps the weight balanced over the middle of the foot. It is not correct to say we squat from the heels. That moves the weight too far back. That makes for a more shallow back angle and removes work from the hips. We want the weight to be in balance over the middle of the foot. The knee and back angle are going to be established very early in the squat. So 1/3 to 1/2 of the way down, the knee and back angle is going to be set, and it's not going to change until we get back to this position. Once these two angles are set, the squat depth is then achieved by just flexing the knees. The whole time, the weight needs to remain in balance over the middle of the foot. The ascent portion of the squat is then going to be initiated by driving the hips up, not by raising the chest. The way you can tell if you're doing this correctly is the back angle will not change out of the bottom of the squat. The hips drive up, the back angle does not change. So essentially the second half of your squat, from the bottom all the way back up to the top, is going to look like the first half played in reverse. The knee and the back angle are going to be maintained until 1/2 to 2/3 of the way up before they change and we stand all the way up at the end of the squat. So let's look at the bottom position of the squat in a little bit of detail and look for some key things. First, the hips are going to be slightly below parallel. The knees are going to be out over the toes. And the bar is going to be balanced over the midfoot, and the back angle is going to be whatever it needs to be to allow the bar to be in balance. Now this bottom position is not going to look exactly the same for every lifter. The keys to knowing if we have a good bottom position are the hips slightly below parallel, are the knees out over the toes, and is the weight balanced over the middle of the foot. If these things are right, the back angle will be what it needs to be to allow the bar to remain in balance. And here's a couple of pictures side by side of lifters of different heights to show you that these back angles can vary while still having a correct bottom position in the squat. At this point, I should also mention the use of what's called stretch reflex. So as we're descending into the bottom of the squat, our muscles are storing more and more tension all the way until we hit parallel. And at that point, we can use this stored tension to effectively bounce out of the bottom. Again, it's going to be the hips bouncing and not raising the chest, but this stored tension rebounding out of the bottom is called stretch reflex. So I hope this has been helpful to you. One thing I should mention is that none of this is going to replace being in a good gym with a good qualified coach. So that's number one. This video is just made to give you an overview if you're in a situation where you don't have someone that can help you out with this, or you want to just periodically check yourself to make sure that you're squatting with proper form. This video will help you. Go ahead and subscribe to our channel. We put videos like this out every week so you don't miss any of those. Also hit like on this video. And head on over to DominionStrengthTraining.com. We've got our leather weightlifting belt there along with other products. And that's all for this week. See you next time.